I quickly noticed in my life that being the best is not enough. I found reasons like poor career management, discrimination, health issues, and legal problems. Many people combine the best with the worst. And that made me think about what we can do about it. The basketball player Oscar Schmidt, from Brazil, was one of the first I noticed. For the Summer Olympics, Oscar Schmidt is the all-time leading points scorer with 1,093 points. He had the most points scored in a single game with 55 points. He was the top scorer in 1988 in Seoul, 1992 in Barcelona, and 1996 in Atlanta.
Smart misses. It looked like the USA was going to win in a rout. Brazil wins the gold. Shocking game. They threw their hearts on the floor for this game, Dick. They deserve the victory. They deserve the gold.
During his overall basketball career, Oscar Schmidt achieved 49,973 points in 1,626 games. He became part of the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2013. Oscar Schmidt isn't a failure. But he's much less successful financially and much less known than I expected. Kobe Bryant said that Oscar Schmidt was one of his idols. He said Oscar Schmidt could have been one of the greatest players in the NBA if he had played in the league. Despite being one of the best basketball players in history, he never got the recognition and opportunities associated with being in the NBA. He was Kobe Bryant's idol, but much less successful in terms of income and recognition. The painter Vincent van Gogh is an example of the starving artist who sacrifices well-being in pursuit of art. Van Gogh created more than 2,000 artworks in just over a decade. His works are among the world's most expensive paintings ever sold. Works like Portrait of Dr. Gachet, Portrait of Joseph Roulin, and Irises have adjusted values of more than $140 million each. However, Van Gogh suffered from psychotic episodes and depression, did not eat properly, and drank heavily. Although Van Gogh was not considered poor, he was financially supported by his brother Theo, and usually had very little money left for food and drink after buying painting supplies. Van Gogh sold only one painting during his lifetime. He died from a self-inflicted gunshot at age 37. One of my favorite painters is Caravaggio. Caravaggio's work is considered the beginning of modern painting. He went against the conventions of Italian artists of his time, painting religious works that were intense, unsettling, realistic, visceral, and bloody. Caravaggio influenced painters like Rembrandt in Holland, Diego Velázquez in Spain, and Theodore Géricault in France. Caravaggio's innovative staging and treatment of light and shade also inspired Pier Paolo Pasolini and Martin Scorsese in cinema. Caravaggio was a knight inducted by the Grand Master of the Knights of St. John in Malta. However, Caravaggio spent most of his later career as a fugitive from justice. He was arrested for bearing arms in public. He was also arrested several times for insulting city guards. Caravaggio was sued for not paying his rent and then sued again for throwing rocks through the window of his landlady. He was associated with many prostitutes and courtesans, who even served as models for paintings considered sadistic erotic. There is evidence suggesting that Caravaggio acted as a pimp, benefiting from free models, sexual encounters, and extra income while not painting. He also faced accusations related to sodomy, homosexuality, and blasphemy. Caravaggio castrated and murdered Tomasoni, the pimp of a well-known prostitute who modeled for several of his paintings. Caravaggio was sentenced to beheading for the murder of Tomasoni. He then started to often depict severed heads as part of his paintings. Caravaggio fled, hunted down by the wealthy Tomasoni family. He was expelled from the Knights Order as a foul and rotten member. The death of Caravaggio at 36 is still a matter of debate. Rumors suggest the Tomasoni family killed him, that the Knights killed him, that he died of diseases like syphilis, malaria, or brucellosis, that he died due to sepsis after being wounded in a brawl, or that he died of poisoning due to the lead contained in the paints he used. The writer Machado de Assis is another Brazilian on my list. Machado de Assis was a novelist, poet, and playwright. He taught himself French, English, German, and Greek. Machado de Assis was a Knight of the Imperial Order of the Rose, founder of the Brazilian Academy of Letters, and regarded as an ideal husband with 35 years of a perfect married life. He wrote the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, the most important book written in the Portuguese language. His works influenced authors like Jorge Luis Borges, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and Mario Vargas Llosa. The works of Machado de Assis have been celebrated by intellectuals like Salman Rushdie, Woody Allen, and Harold Bloom. However, Machado de Assis was of mixed race, African and Azorean, and the grandson of freed slaves before slavery was abolished. He was called a genuine representative of the subrace, often a victim of racism even among his supporters. Machado de Assis was found too black by some and not black enough by others. He fell into a deep depression after his wife died and died a few years later. Machado de Assis remains relatively unknown, even among Latin American writers. His multiple translations in English never achieved large sales.
What am I supposed to do? Why didn't you warn me this is the best book that's ever been written? Amazing. But I can't even imagine how good this is in Portuguese. So now, in the middle of a Read Around the World project, I have a side quest to learn Portuguese.
Another writer is Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe is a central figure of American literature. He was one of the earliest practitioners or inventors of short stories, detective fiction, and science fiction. His literature influenced fields like cosmology and cryptography, as well as films and television. Edgar Allan Poe influenced authors like Arthur Conan Doyle, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, H.P. Lovecraft, Alfred Hitchcock, and Vladimir Nabokov. Edgar Allan Poe was very respected in France, due to his translations by Charles Baudelaire. However, Edgar Allan Poe faced financial difficulties throughout his life, as he tried to live by writing alone. Edgar Allan Poe's father abandoned the family 1 year after Edgar was born, and his mother died a year later of tuberculosis. He started to attend the University of Virginia but left after a year due to a lack of money, possibly related to gambling debts. Edgar Allan Poe had children born out of extramarital affairs, which was one of the reasons that led his foster family to disown him. Edgar Allan Poe purposely got court-martialed at West Point when he was matriculated as a cadet. Publishers refused to pay Edgar Allan Poe for the work he did or paid him much later than promised, as the writer was negatively affected by the lack of international copyright law at the time. Edgar Allan Poe died aged 40. The cause of death remains unknown, but it has been attributed to diseases like delirium tremens, heart disease, epilepsy, syphilis, cholera, and rabies. There has been speculation about alcoholism and substance abuse, suicide, poisoning, and involvement with electoral fraud. Edgar Allan Poe's obituary was written by an enemy known for attempting to destroy the writer's reputation, and who had also written a biography with claims that were seriously disputed and denounced by those who knew Edgar Allan Poe well. The story of Edgar Allan Poe reminds me of the writer Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka was one of the major figures of 20th century literature. He influenced authors like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Milan Kundera, Jorge Luis Borges, Albert Camus, Jean-Paul Sartre, José Saramago, and Haruki Murakami. Franz Kafka's impact on culture has been so important that the term Kafkaesque was developed to describe concepts and situations that are surreal, bizarre, illogical, and nightmarish, evoking feelings of disorientation and helplessness. Franz Kafka died in obscurity at the age of 40 from tuberculosis, apparently leading to starvation. Franz Kafka seemed to suffer from schizoid personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, psychophysiological insomnia, and anorexia nervosa, with suicidal tendencies. Franz Kafka struggled with self-doubt and burned an estimated 90% of his total works and instructed his close friend Max Brod to destroy his unfinished works. Some of Kafka's books were published later because Max Brod ignored the instruction to destroy the works. His most famous work, The Metamorphosis, was published in magazines but received little attention. Another example in literature is Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson is one of the most important figures in American poetry and one of the central writers of Western civilization. She wrote about 1,800 poems. Emily Dickinson was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. Taylor Swift is distantly related to Emily Dickinson as sixth cousins, and there are many connections between the works of these two artists. However, Emily Dickinson was little known during her life. She lived mostly in isolation, being reluctant to leave her bedroom later in life, and basing her friendships mostly upon correspondence. Emily Dickinson published only 10 poems and a letter when alive, and they were usually edited to fit conventional poetic rules. Many of her poems were dedicated to her sister-in-law but censored and obliterated after the relationship was regarded as an indication of lesbian romance. There is also the Austrian composer Franz Schubert. Franz Schubert created more than 600 secular vocal works, 7 complete symphonies, sacred music, operas, incidental music, piano, and chamber music. Franz Schubert is one of the greatest composers in history, championed by other artists like Mendelssohn, Schumann, Liszt, and Brahms. Franz Schubert's works like Ave Maria can be widely recognized by the public. However, Franz Schubert's most prolific year, 1815, was a period when he only had money enough for his basic needs like clothing, paper, and ink. Franz Schubert was arrested by the police, suspected of revolutionary activities and use of insulting language. He showed signs of depression and almost certainly suffered from a personality disorder throughout his life. Franz Schubert apparently suffered from syphilis and died due to the mercury used to treat the disease. Franz Schubert died when he was 31. Back to sports in Brazil, there is the main Garrincha. Garrincha was one of the greatest soccer players of all time. In the 1958 World Cup, Garrincha was the player with the most popular appeal, ahead of the phenomenal player Pelé. Garrincha led Brazil to a World Cup victory in 1962 after Pelé got injured. It's said that Garrincha won the World Cup single-handedly as Pelé was injured and the rest of the team was mostly composed of players in the twilight of their careers. Besides winning the World Cup, Garrincha also won the Golden Ball Award as the player of the tournament, and the Golden Boot Award as the leading goal scorer. Garrincha was named in the FIFA World Cup all-time team. It's believed that Garrincha was the first one to use the interjection "Ole," now commonly used by the crowd during a game for a team or a player who made an exceptional performance. The playwright Nelson Rodrigues said that Garrincha was the player who taught Brazilian soccer fans to laugh. However, Garrincha was certified as a cripple when he was born. His right leg was 6 centimeters shorter than his left leg. His right leg was turned inwards, while his left leg was turned outwards. Garrincha was an alcoholic, a problem that he inherited from his father. Garrincha got a girl pregnant during a tour in Sweden. He is known to have fathered at least 14 children. Garrincha started working at a factory when he was 14, but he was sacked for laziness. Garrincha left money to rot, lived in the slums, and signed a blank contract given by a sports club which filled it in with the lowest salary they could. Garrincha was a bad driver and once hit a truck at 50 miles per hour, flipping the car. Garrincha suffered from depression and attempted several suicide multiple times. When Garrincha was older and famous, he wanted to buy a house. But he had no income, no savings, and had a loan refused by the Sports Confederation. Garrincha's second marriage ended after his wife moved out, fearing that Garrincha would turn his violence from her to the child they had. Garrincha died as a symbol of someone exploited, a symbol of the majority of Brazilians who are also exploited. Garrincha died of cirrhosis in an alcoholic coma, unhappy, obscure, a physical and mental wreck. Garrincha and Pelé used to be named in the same breath. Pelé was nicknamed the King, regarded as a model player, and still famous worldwide. Pelé registered his name as a trademark, hired a manager, and became a business investor. Garrincha was nicknamed the Joy of the People, indulged in many vices, and is a tragic figure. There are many other examples that we can remember. They can include Jim Thorpe, one of the greatest athletes in history. Stu Ungar, winner of the World Series of Poker's main event 3 times. Ada Lovelace, considered the first computer programmer. Hedy Lamarr, who was recognized for her acting career, but not very much for her contributions to technology, like the techniques that led to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Those people were among the best in their fields, too. And they also faced challenges related to financial difficulties, lack of recognition, addictions, family issues, legal troubles, physical and mental problems, and many forms of discrimination. There are others who were relatively successful, but much less than we would expect given their brilliance. The game designer Yu Suzuki, who has trouble continuing Shenmue, the game of his dreams but not commercially viable. The comic book artist Will Eisner. The Eisner Awards, the most prestigious recognition in the comics industry, are named after him, but Will Eisner is often unrecognized. I never expected to meet someone like him randomly walking alone at a comics event as I did decades ago. The bad news is that being the best is not enough. The good news is that we can often improve, and there are problems that can be fixed. I faced many of these issues in my life, too. I was born in poverty, I was told I would never succeed because of my race, and I struggled due to my poor health since I was a kid. However, I met a lot of good people to help me face those challenges over time. Not everyone is good, but there are good people in the world, we must look for them. Doing good activities is also vital. Exercising, meditating, talking to others, and practicing some type of arts. Those people and activities didn't change my life in one day, but they did change my life. And I've seen they changing many others.